interesting. It is review, so if you've already watched the last 2 videos, you don't have to watch this one at the moment. But here's the way I go about this business. I started by getting out my good old sketchbook and started doing a whole bunch of sketches. The idea was a strong male and a adoring female. I'm not sure that's the best way to summarize it, and we're going for a storybook style, if you will. In fact, he described it as a cross between the pre-Raphaelite artists and anime or manga. And I did a number. It's right there. It says 46. And they said, no, they're too passive and want more energy. So then on separate pieces of paper, this shows you, by the way, the technique that I use a lot is I'll do a drawing on one side or the other. I don't know which one I did first here. And then I have a light table here, and I turn it over and trace through the back. I use that trick a lot. Anyway, so I did a whole bunch more illustrations. I think when I finished, I had done about 50 sketches of couples, and then we narrowed our inspiration down to 2 major things. One is this photograph, and 2 are these AI generated sketches. This gives us some style, faces and clothing and pose. So those 2 and this photograph. So then I started, again, still reviewing work that I did a couple weeks ago. I started doing sketches based on more on those 2 things. And here you can see the technique that I often use to achieve accurate or fairly accurate anatomical dimensions. So a bunch of that. So I would draw on this on one side and then turn it over and flesh it out that way. So let me run through this. So you see here I start getting a little more confident in what I'm aiming for, and I would send these to my client Giff and say, am I on track? This one I actually jumped ahead quite a bit. So I went from this to this because I just wanted to see if we were generally on track. So Giff's my client, again, his response to this was, clothing is good, faces are pretty good, still not totally happy with the pose. And then he said, Giff is a pretty good artist himself. As you can see, he did this sketch and said, something a little more like this. So the different kids, his boys, and they said, no, we have to have a torch. So I started doing, based on Giff's sketch, managed to knock this out. And I was actually quite surprised because, frankly, I kind of liked the feel of this thing right here, but that was based on, where we got to in our journey. And after I did this one, I went, oh, I kind of like that too. So again, that was based partly on Giff's sketch. Can you see that? All right. So yesterday, I think it was, I said, well, because the next thing I'm going to do. So let me stop stuttering. At this point, I made notes here. This sketch, I think we're about 80% or 50% on the pose. 50% the pose is nailed down. 90% clothing is nailed down, and that's more based on this earlier sketch. Clothing, 90%. Faces, I said 60%. So then it's time for me to start working on faces. So real quickly, I'll show you what I did mostly yesterday, off camera. And you'll see here the technique that I just described that I will often do a sketch on. So this is a tracing of, I traced basically this sketch. Get it? Here's the blow up, traced it. Then I turned that over and did this. Then I scanned it into my computer and I tweaked it in the computer. And then this is going to go way too long. So let me go really quickly. I did that. Then I did that. Then I think yesterday afternoon, I think this is where I ended up yesterday afternoon. I went, But when by the way, in case you want to know, the very best technique for developing a painting and illustration is to sleep on it. Because when you come back and see it the next day, you see all kinds of things that you didn't see yesterday. So just a little while ago, again, I had this image scanned into my computer, and in Photoshop, I felt like he's too, I don't know how to say it other than too doughy-eyed. He's too, I don't know, too much eyelid, half-mast. So I tweaked that's the only thing I did in Photoshop, because it's so much easier to do, as you know, on a computer than it is drawing it all over again. So I made his eyebrows tilt down a little bit more. Can you see these two? Eyebrows down, a little more serious. Eyes narrowed a little bit, actually, and lengthened a little bit. So here is where I am today. Now let me back up, because the other thing I did yesterday, this illustration is going to be done as a etching, woodcut, etching. I guess those two words are good enough. So I practiced a bunch, and that's what I'm going to show you in a few minutes, some of that development. Then I shrunk it down because I wanted to see how this is not final, this is just rough. But I wanted to see it small. Is that going to fit on the cover of a book? And I went, yeah, I think so. Okay, so here now is our final face. I think that's the same as that one. It is. Okay, I can throw that out. Thank you. Now, here's a good learning principle. Let me switch you to my face just for a minute. Anytime you have to do a painting or an illustration, I guess I'm really talking about the business of illustration here. Many illustrators have one style. In fact, I'm going to show you one of those in a minute. No, that's not true. He has two styles. Sorry. Anyway, many illustrators have one style, and they stick with it. I was an all-arounder. In fact, if you want to see that, you can go to dannelsonart.com. It is up and running. And navigate to the illustration page, scroll down, you'll see a whole bunch of albums of different categories of illustration. So that's just the way I work. But when you have to do a style of illustration that may not be your forte, what I recommend is going online, and find the very best person you can find who works in that style. And in this case, that was easy. I've done several etchings, or these are actually fake etchings, but close enough. I've done several etchings over the course of my career. And my go-to guy is this Lark Summers. Frozen? Are we back? Okay, we're back. If any of you ever went to Barnes & Noble Books, then you may remember seeing these illustrations of authors on the wall all around Barnes & Noble's books. And they caught my attention immediately. This is 10 or 15 years ago. And they're done by, again, a man named Mark Summers. So what I recommend often, if you have to do an airbrush illustration, find the best examples. Don't pick second best, pick the very best, the one that you think is the best. And I think Mark Summers is the best at etching. So I'm looking at these to be schooled by him. Does that make sense? Of course it does. All right. So let's get to the job at hand. Let me see. I'm going to go back. Let me find the final face. I hope I didn't just get myself messed up by misplacing the face. while I rifle through all these pages. Where did I just put it? There we go. All right. Final face. There we go. No, that is not final face. Hang on, folks. Hang on. I was afraid this might happen. I have so many copies of so many things here. There we go. There we go. All right, that's it. Sorry about that. So I'm going to do one more practice etching. That is one of the things I've learned over the years. When you do etching in this style that I just showed you of Mark Summers, is you have to plan ahead, so to speak, where your coated stock or enamel stock or shiny paper. And when you get in the mail a brochure that is shiny, that means it's done on enamel stock, coated stock, shiny paper. And it just so happens, that yesterday I went out to my garage and I sprayed this with a medium light coat of workable fixative. Okay? And the reason is so that I can scratch off the ink fairly easily. All right, now I'm assuming you can see this all right. How far can I zoom in? I think I could do that. Let me turn off some of the other lights so I can see a little bit better. All right, and I'm going to start doing, and by the way, right now I'm just using a Faber-Castell pen, and it is the FH nib, which means it's medium hard medium hard soft nib. When you push down, the line widens, and when you use less weight, the line is thinner. And all I am doing right now is practicing what exactly is the style of etching that I want to use for this illustration. And of course, on the cover of a book, the illustration is going to be, 1/4 this size. Oh, but I believe this is the size, I think, that I can do the finished illustration on when I do the etching. Okay, let me back up just for a second and show you. I'm going to do the final etching on clayboard, and this is 16 by 20. So my final etching has to fit. Can I get another picture of that? Yeah. No, it's a bad image for some reason. Sorry. Anyway, so this is what I'm going to be working on. Here, let me peel the plastic off. So this is called clayboard. And it's wonderful stuff. I've used it before. One of my slightly more popular videos on YouTube is me doing a self-portrait, a portrait of myself dressed in medieval artist. So I'll talk a lot more about this later, but this is what I'm going to be doing the final illustration on. Just wanted you to see that. So as you can see, this is very much poor man's clayboard, if you will. And I'm not going to broadcast me doing this entire exercise. That would be dreadfully boring, but I'll let you watch me for just a few minutes. And again, when I or Mark Summers, when we call this an etching style, I want to be clear, it's actually faux, F-A-U-X. It's actually fake etching. It's etching done on on clayboard, or as a scratch board, if you will. How do I want to do? Okay, I think I'm going to do one line here. So there are many decisions that need to be made when you're doing, I'm going to call it an etching or a scratch board. And all of those decisions will have a significant impact on the overall appearance of the illustration. That's why you do practices, to make some of those decisions ahead of time. Again, so this fake etching technique entails, and I'll be doing it on a clayboard that I just showed you, it entails drawing first in ink. And when I do the final artwork, I will not be using this felt tip pen. I'll be using a good old-fashioned rapidograph pen with India ink. Isn't that something? When's the last time you saw anybody use one of those? I was thinking the other night, I bought my first 50 years ago. Is that crazy? Hard to believe. But for the practice phase, in other words, I'm deciding, is this the angle, for instance, right now? Is this the angle that I want to use to do the shading on this side of his forehead? Is this the kind of line that I want to do the edge of his temple? And so on. All those decisions, because if you don't plan ahead, you'll find yourself doing things and then wishing you hadn't done them. Oh, I wish I'd made those lines go the other way. Everything, at least in my opinion, everything has to be planned out. I would love to talk to Mark Summers and see if he agrees with that. Give me just a few more minutes, and then I'm going to pick up one of my scratching tools and demonstrate that for you for just a few minutes. System, so I'll have that hooked up shortly, so hopefully we'll have better quality in my stream. All right, now there's a number of things happening, like I have lines going all different ways. I don't think I want to do that. So, all right, let me show you then some of the tools that I have. I don't have any fancy etching tools. These are all just standard, art store. Some of them are at least one of them is Speedball. Oh, and I see that I'm missing one. Okay, I'll put the lookup for that here. And this is an X-Acto knife with an unusual blade, but I think I'm going to start by using this one right here. Let's see how my fake clayboard like that one. Let me try another one. Let's see if I can get a sharper cut. Oh yeah, much better. There we go. So what gives etching, or in this case fake etching, its distinctive feel is what you see me doing here now. Scratching the ink off with these white, creating these white hash marks or lines. So it's sort of like cross hatching, but instead of doing all black on black on black, you do white on black. So I did the black first and then going the other way. Excuse me. So when I made that bold line down the bridge of his nose a few minutes ago, I knew that I was going to scratch through it and make it less abrupt, less hard edge. So I've softened it with the my fake scratch board or clay board is working quite well. Again, it's shiny paper, which you can buy at any office supply store and some art supply stores, with a little bit of workable fixative sprayed onto it. And then, of course, with scratch board or clay board, you can also come back and redo dark lines. Although you want to be careful not to go back and forth too many times, because it quickly becomes overworked. You know about overwork, don't you? Every artist does. Up here, my hand, I rested my hand evidently on that part, and it lifted off some of that ink. So that's not good, but that won't happen with the real clay board and the real ink. I'll do just a little bit more before I quit. Now I'm having a little problem with the ink, the water-based ink that I'm drawing with, beading up on this, on the workable fixative, which is not entirely surprising. I'm assuming you can see how I am tracing the image on the piece of paper underneath, right? That's a pencil drawing that I scanned into my computer and made a copy. Oops, 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 oops. Here's the missing. Let's see how this one works. Part of the reason, that doesn't work very well. Part of the reason for my practice also is to figure out which of my scratching tools are good and sharp. So I can use the good ones and avoid the bad ones when I'm doing the final illustrations. Okay, I am not liking this, but I'm glad I did it because it shows me what I don't want to do. What I'm ending up with is too much of a checkerboard pattern. Let me go back to one of Mark Summers' excellent illustrations so you can see the difference. Yeah, he uses a lot more parallel straight lines. Now, of course, I'm sure he did the illustration larger than this, but parallel straight lines, and that's a limited amount of cross-hatching. So on my next practice, I'll try to emulate that a little bit better. But I think that's good enough. You've seen I'm wearing really thick glasses to do this close-up work, by the way. And I hope that's interesting. I hope that's entertaining to some degree. And I'll bring you on at the next phase of this project. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.